4.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. We are thrilled that you have taken the next step in the process by opening an application. I'm Reva Ramadorai, Broadcom Master's Director, here with my colleague, Erin Cummins.
Hi there.
Erin and I are responsible for the Broadcom Master's program, and you will receive emails from us throughout the application process. This session is being recorded so that other students who cannot join us today can also hear this information. Today, we're going to talk with some Broadcom Masters alumni who were finalists in 2016, 2019, and 2020. But before we get started, I want to give you a quick synopsis of the Broadcom Masters program itself. Broadcom Masters is a program of the Society for Science, which is the organization that Erin and I work for. The Society for Science is a nonprofit dedicated to public engagement in the scientific community. The Society for Science also runs 3 distinguished science competitions. The first is the Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, which is the world's largest international pre-college science competition and is open to high school students. Next, the Regeneron Science Talent Search is the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and math competition for high school seniors. Finally, we have the Broadcom Masters competition, which is the one that you all have been nominated for.
The Broadcom Math, Applied Science, Technology, and Engineering for Rising Stars, or MASTERS, is the premier national science fair-based competition for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. In order to qualify for Broadcom Masters, to enter Broadcom Masters, a student must place within the top 10% in a society-affiliated science fair. If you are watching this video, then you likely have already received a nomination. Congratulations. This is an incredible opportunity, and so we definitely encourage you to make the most of it. If you haven't opened an application already, hopefully you will after this webinar. Ultimately, 30 Broadcom Masters finalists have the opportunity to spend a week showcasing their research projects and competing as teams in hands-on STEM activities. We have several recorded webinars to walk you through the application process and answer your questions. You can find recordings of these in the Resources tab in your SurveyMonkey Apply account.
Today, we are speaking with 2016 finalist Cynthia Chen, 2019 finalist Johan, and 2020 finalist Ishana Kumar. Our wonderful alumni are here to talk to you about their experience as Broadcom Masters finalists, share their advice for you as nominees through this process, and to answer your questions.
So to start it off, we'll go to Cynthia Chen. Cynthia is from Cupertino, California, and won the 2nd place Science Award in 2016 for her project, A Novel Method for Reducing Water Consumption in Germinating Seeds. In 2020, as a high school senior, Cynthia was a finalist in the Regeneron Science Talent Search. Her project was in computational biology and bioinformatics and focused on using AI to identify different cancer types. Cynthia is also the founder and CEO of Opportunity X, a national organization that brings research opportunities to underrepresented students, and she just finished her 1st year as an undergraduate at Harvard.
Johan is from Mason, Ohio, and won the 2nd place Mathematics Award in 2019 for his project titled Salt Stain Effect for a Rapid, Low-Cost Analysis of Drink Water. He has continued his investigation into contaminated water, and at the 2021 Regeneron International Science and Engineering Fair, Johan won 3rd place in the category of Earth and Environmental Science. In his free time, Johan also enjoys playing tennis and practicing the violin.
Our most recent finalist from this past year is Ishana Kumar. Ishana is from Chappaqua, New York, and won the $25,000 Samueli Foundation Prize, which is our top award, for her project, Color is in the Eye of the Beholder, the role of retinal fatigue on imaginary Fechner colors. Her project investigated whether tiring out specialized cells in the eye accounts for why people are able to create an optical illusion where they see colors when alternating a black and white pattern. Ishana is active in her school's environmental club and also enjoys fencing and plays the flute. Hi, Cynthia, Johan, and Ishana. Welcome, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. Really excited.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi, thank you.
Of course. All right. Well, so let's get started right into our questions. So our first question is kind of a two-part question. What inspired you to start your Broadcom Masters project? You can also talk about any other recent projects you have. And how did you stay motivated when things didn't go as planned or you faced any challenges? Cynthia, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, for sure. So the inspiration behind my Broadcom Masters project was actually the California drought. So this was back in like 2016 when it was really bad. And I remember there was like a period of time where the government was telling us to not water our like front lawns, like take shorter showers. And yeah, like it hadn't rained in like a few months or almost like a year. So the drought was a huge issue like in my home state of California. So I did like some basic research, just like a few Google searches on like what was causing the drought and why it was such a big problem. And I realized that most of the water actually went towards agriculture. So I really wanted to devise a way to reduce the amount of water consumption used in agriculture. So the way that I did so was by engineering this pod that you could put a seed in when it was germinating, and using like water crystals and various like biodegradable filters, it would help retain the water like given to the seed, and thus reduce the total amount of water needed. And so I ran a bunch of experiments using this like newly engineered capsule and found that it reduced the total amount of water by 2/3. And so that was the project that I presented at Broadcom Masters. Afterwards, I did a couple projects, more computational, which is like involving coding and a lot of like data analysis. And I can talk more about this later as well. But yeah, the Broadcom Masters project really taught me a lot about running a science experiment from start to end, and teaching me how to present my research to a greater audience as well.
Thanks so much, Cynthia. Ishana, do you want to go next? And also, I just want to really quickly interject to say that folks that are watching can ask any questions to our alumni here. If you type it in the chat, we'll take questions at the end. And you can also ask questions about the application process for Erin and I to answer as well. So go ahead, Ishana.
Thank you. I started my project because I have a big fascination with just illusions in general and color, and also our perception. So I wanted to learn more about like the way our brain perceives different things, and more about illusions generally. And so when I started my project, it has to do with the Benham's disk, which is a spinning black and white disk. And for some reason, it's entirely black and white. But for some reason, when we look at this disk, we see colors, and they're imaginary colors. They don't actually exist. And although this disk has been studied for over 100 years, we don't actually know why we perceive these imaginary colors. So I wanted to learn more about why we perceive these imaginary colors, and just learn more about the brain's perception of color and also the world. So I used something called retinal fatigue, which basically it temporarily turns off your ability to see one color. So for example, red. And after temporarily turning off one of these colors, I had participants and subjects look at the black and white disk, and it turns out that there was a change in the imaginary colors perceived. And I did have like a couple, I guess, bumps in the road. But I have like a big curiosity for science, and I think that's really what really drove me to keep on going.
That's awesome. I think that also resonates with a lot of our nominees and applicants currently watching. Johan, do you want to talk a little bit about your Broadcom Masters project or other projects?
Yeah, sure. So the inspiration for my project came when I went to Ethiopia. I traveled with my parents to Ethiopia in 2018. And I was shocked to find how a lot of the locals there had yellow teeth, and I was puzzled by this. So I found that this was due to high concentrations of fluoride and other ions in drinking water, which can be a bit detrimental to it can be detrimental health-wise. So I was curious about this problem and the reasons behind it, and I found that there wasn't a way to detect high levels of fluoride and other ions in water, especially quickly, rapidly, and at a low cost. So I focused on utilizing this effect known as the Saltzstein effect. So I found that when water droplets, especially that have ions in it, dry on glass, it has sort of like a salt stain pattern. And I found that depending on the salt and the concentration of the solute in the water, the pattern would be different. So I found that I could take different pictures of this and use it to build sort of like an image database. And by using this, I can characterize the salt pattern for any given number of different ions that could be in the water. So this was able to give people a way to quickly characterize and find out what's in their water. In 2020, I competed in the MIT Think program, which is an online submission-based science fair project, which is run by MIT, and I qualified as a semifinalist. As for my more recent endeavors, currently my project centers on the issue of water security and environmental preservation. My project this year at the 2021 ISEF competition looked at taking crustacean shell waste and converting it into an adsorbent in household and point of use water treatment applications. But I think more so for advice for some of the new applicants this year, I think it's most importantly is to find an issue that you're really passionate about and try to invest your time in looking at how can I tackle this issue and what can I do to solve this problem.
That's great advice. Thanks so much, Johan. And I really like how we kind of heard from all of you about your different inspirations, and some for you and Cynthia, it was really looking at a problem that you were seeing and how to solve it. And Yishana, just really researching a phenomenon that you found, to be really interesting. So I think it's a great variety of ways to get inspired to do research.
So once you guys competed at your fair and you received nominations to Broadcom Masters, what made you actually decide to go through and apply? And what were some difficulties that you encountered in the application? I'm going to give you this one, Ashana, since you filled out the application most recently, and then we'll turn it over to the others. So yeah, how did that go?
I think what made me apply to Broadcom Masters was I actually went the year before because my brother's also an alumni of Society for the Science of the Public. And I got to see like the live showcase public day with other Broadcom Masters students from the year before. And I was just so inspired by all of these people that kids my age were making such a big impact and difference in the world, and that they were doing like so much and these amazing projects. And I think that really inspired me to at least give it a shot and see. And I also think it's a really good experience. I hadn't really done a lot of science fairs before this, just my local science fair. And I also think that applying to Broadcom Masters really gave me experience on how to write an application and how to word things to best explain your science.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great point about learning valuable skills through the application. Johan or Cynthia, did either of you want to add anything about what made you go from being just a nominee to actually applying to Broadcom Masters?
I think I'll go first. So when I first found out I was selected for Broadcom Masters, this was following the Ohio State Science Fair. So this was a bit late in the application process. So initially when I first found out, I was really worried that I wouldn't have enough time to complete the application. And I had heard about the program and how, I was worried that maybe my project's not good enough, or I don't think I can do this in time. But my science teacher, my 8th grade biology teacher, motivated me to try to pursue this, and motivated me to go through with the application process. I found that some of the questions, although focused on just generally what's about your project and what's important about it, what issues does it solve, some of the other questions required a bit more thinking and maybe focused on your thought process and general approach to scientific thinking. But I think that I had a short amount of time to complete that application, but I think that was the main hurdle in mine. But I found that just really trying to focus on what was the main point of my project, what was the important parts, helped me to finish it before the deadline. And I got to get the main point of my project across.
Awesome. So that deadline was really like the motivator for you there to get that done. All right, Cynthia, anything else?
Yeah, I think just to add on, I think when I got the nomination, I think I always knew that I wanted to apply, but after seeing, I think I remember looking at like some of the highlight videos from like past finals week when I was like applying, and kind of just, I think I talked to someone who was like a finalist maybe the year above me. And after just kind of seeing this, I knew I really wanted to have the opportunity to like potentially present my research at finals week. For, like Ashana, it was kind of my first year of doing science fairs and presenting my research. And it was like my first research project. So I really wanted just this incredible opportunity to further present my research. And even if I didn't get chosen as a finalist, I knew that like writing the research itself and just explaining it more would help me better even understand my project. So I think for me, that was a really great opportunity as well.
Awesome. Well, that's great to hear.
So some of you already touched on this a little bit, but what advice would you give that you wish you had received when applying to Broadcom Masters? Johan, do you want to start?
Sure. I think it's important to focus on a well-organized response, try to follow the problem guidelines. And I think you should really focus on the important part of your project. What makes it unique? What makes it important? And what problems does it solve? So I think that's something that you should try to highlight in your application, and something that should be a main goal for some of the applicants this year.
Yeah, that's great advice. Cynthia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, one thing that is pretty important when maybe writing up your research is that you are probably like an expert on your own project. Like you've probably been working on it for the past year or at least a few months. So you know your project like inside and out, but also realize that the people that are reading your application might like are complete strangers to your project. So it's really important to be able to convey your research in a clear, concise, and understandable manner. Like Johan mentioned, it's important to like highlight the impacts of your research and exactly what problem it's solving. In that way, like the people who are reading it are able to better understand like what your research is doing, like your motivations behind doing it, and overall just be able to relate to your research more, which is very important when they're reading it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great advice to keep in mind, that not everyone is an expert in your particular field. And that's another really important part of just communicating about science in general. How do you communicate this so that the general public can understand? So great advice. Ishana, anything to add?
Yeah, I had kind of a silly experience with the Broadcom Masters application itself. I had opened the application, like, I think around this time, about around this time, maybe a little bit earlier. And I'd started working on my essays, started outlining, and I actually, on the day that it was due, I was starting to put in my essays. And for the science section, I had no idea that there was an entire second page, and I didn't do any of it.
Oh, no.
So I'm sitting here like an hour before, and I don't have any of the applications. So I think that a piece of advice, and this is really silly, that I wish that I had known, was check both pages and make sure to go through the entire application. And I think the other thing was, I guess, like when you're writing, it's not just a process of writing and pacing it out. So I guess what worked for me was big ideas, outline, and then kind of zooming in more on the outline and being more specific. And as I was writing, I was really trying to keep an open mind, because I realized that I know I did my project. So like, I guess I know some things that may be implied to me, but to other people looking this, it could not be obvious. So being just very clear and open and concise with like your project description, for example, like the abstract, I think that was really important and something that I learned along the way.
That's, yeah, really great pieces of advice there. And also love that all of you kind of touched on this a little bit, or most of you did, but even if you realize there's a page 2, the last day of the application deadline, you can still make it happen. So don't be worried about crunching too hard on time. There's still plenty of time left to keep working and submit your application.
So our next question, actually, Ashana just addressed it. Our next question was going to be about writing and how it's a big part of scientific publishing and presenting. And we just want to know what advice you have for getting started putting pen to paper for students that might be stuck. So Shauna, I think you really did a great job kicking it off there, talking about an outline and then going from there. Johan or Cynthia, do either of you have any words of wisdom on this topic?
Yeah, I think one thing that kind of helped me sometimes when I found myself at like a roadblock with like writing was, especially for like those questions where you have to explain your project or, you know, maybe explain a certain part of it. Maybe just try like either talking to your sibling or your parents or something and just saying it out loud and going from there. Or even just being in your room and just like explaining to the computer like out loud. It does help with like getting your thoughts out and kind of figuring out a way to best convey your ideas. You could even like record yourself and write down whatever you say, if that helps. I think another tip that I have is also just to, I think, have some fun with it. Obviously, you don't want to be like too colloquial in your writing, but it's never a bad thing to like, you know, make your essays creative or have just like a little bit more fun with your application. So yeah, it doesn't have to be like a boring process for sure. You can feel free to spice it up a little bit.
I love that. Love that. Johan, anything to add?
If I may add, you know, already, I know Cynthia and Shauna touched base on this, but I think it's important to just know that developing, you know, scientific writing is sort of like walking up a stair. You know, you have to take it like one step at a time. I think that I think a lot of the finalists have done, you know, great research and have great data, but if you don't communicate it properly, you know, through this application and through your writing, I think that it'll be difficult and the work is somewhat incomplete. I think that when I go through the writing process, I think it's important to, you know, read up on the topic, and helps me with formulating a lot of research questions. But around this time, I think that it's important that when you're first beginning the project, you don't put off that work until like way later on. I think Shauna talked about that, about doing it the day of the due date. You know, as you're writing it, the report, as you're doing the experiment, you know, it gives you time to reflect on your work and maybe you address other things that you haven't previously. So, you know, start with your introduction first, and then your hypothesis, and really go from there. I think is the main thing. So don't put it off until later. Try to work on it as you're doing it.
Great advice. Taking things just one bite at a time, and then you can eat the whole thing, right? That's how it's done.
Awesome. So now we're going to shift gears a little bit, moving away from the application, and talk a little bit about finals week and your experience there. So for those of you watching, hopefully you've seen our highlights videos. I definitely recommend checking that out, and you can see all of these alumni in the different years of highlights videos. But one of the things that finalists do during our finals week of the competition is participate in hands-on team challenges. So I want to ask, what was it like working on a team together in these challenges? And if you learned any lessons, what lessons have you learned from about teamwork that you've used since Broadcom Masters? Cynthia, do you want to go ahead and get that started?
Yeah, for sure. So I think working in a team was quite interesting, I would say. I definitely got very close to my team like over the course of the week since we did like everything together. I thought it was like a really fun time getting to know them, and I loved how on certain activities like different people would have different strengths. Like I remember someone was really knowledgeable in neuroscience, so when we did like an activity related to the brain, they were like super on top of it and like kind of served as the leader for that activity. So I would say like it definitely taught me that like when you feel like you're maybe stronger in a certain area, or you feel like you could contribute more, it's great to like step up as a leader of the team and serve as like a leading member. Whereas like for other activities where you might not feel as strong or comfortable, it's okay to like not know like what's really going on that much. And I think another great part of it was just like asking questions to your team and learning from other people. I found that was a great way to like get to know them and just have a good time. I also remember there was like some engineering activity where our like product or system kept on failing, but it was great since we still remained like pretty upbeat throughout like the activity and still had a great time. So I think one lesson that I kind of took from that was that your attitude towards like approaching these activities really matters, and it's okay to like run into roadblocks or mistakes or anything as long as you're like optimistic.
Yeah, definitely true. It's definitely most important to have a positive experience along the way, and having the best solution or knowing exactly what to do isn't always what judges are looking for. Just looking for that problem solving and teamwork is also a really big part of the team challenges. So great advice, Cynthia. Ishana or Johan, anything to add to that?
So when I did my team projects, I definitely would agree with what Cynthia was saying about, some topics you feel like a little bit stronger in versus some topics. It's like a place to learn. And I think that was a big part of the team, like challenges. It was not only like, a place where you got to compete against other teams and work together to build these really cool things, but it was really a place to learn. So one of our challenges was like a Raspberry Pi. And prior to this, I'd never really coded a Raspberry Pi, but I think that I learned a lot during that challenge, and it was really, really like fun also. And I think that like it got challenging at sometimes, and sometimes there was conflict, but I think that one of the most important things was to just talk it out. And it also really taught me how to have like a good conversation in a team. So I guess those challenges just taught me a lot about how to be like a good team member.
Yeah, that's awesome. Johan, anything else?
If I may add on that, I think it's important to remember that, science, even outside of the Broadcom Master's program, is a team effort. I think when we work together, we can accomplish much greater things, and it boosts our creativity as we work with other people. We can bounce off ideas from each other. And I think that the team activities, especially coding, which is something that I struggled with, was maybe something that the other teammates were able to help me with. And I think it taught me the importance of communication, as some of the other finalists here mentioned. And also how, you may not always know the answer to something. So it's important, it's important to sometimes ask for help and learn from others.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice that definitely extends beyond Broadcom Masters. So thank you all.
So still talking about finals week, what was each of your favorite part of finals week? And also, we're just curious if you keep in touch with your fellow finalists, and we'd love to hear about it. I'm going to go to you first, Ishana, and I'm going to guess that you still keep in touch with some, because I saw one of your finalist friends here in the chat saying that they were just here to support you watching tonight.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Ishana.
Yeah, we definitely keep in touch. Like especially, well, even now after, I don't know how many months it's been, like 6 months, I think, we still keep in touch. We're still spamming each other on WhatsApp and different communication services. And I think also just the most random like topics that's like, it's really exciting, and the chat like never dies. It's always interesting. And I think that like we've built kind of like a community, and it's just a really close-knit group of friends. And even if it was a little bit harder, I guess, with pandemic and competing online, attending like finals week online, because there was less, you couldn't really just randomly like go up to talk to somebody, but there was definitely breakout rooms. And I think that through that, and even now, we're still bonding and learning more about each other. So yeah, I think that I definitely still keep in touch with my fellow finalists, and it was a really great opportunity.
Great. Yeah, I know that obviously like living in this pandemic virtual world is tough, but your class just did such an amazing job connecting with each other, and we're so happy to hear that you guys are all still friends. Johan, what was your favorite part of finals week?
I think there were a lot of, great and memorable things about it. I think, so many things just come to mind. Breakfast in the morning, getting to talk to everybody. I think maybe the most memorable thing was the sort of like the party at the end. So it was kind of heartfelt, and getting to talk to everybody, and it was a little bit sad to see everybody leave. But I think that in regards to our, just building an overall community and being friends with these people even after the program's ended, and we still keep in touch often. A few weeks ago during the ISEF competition, just a few days ago, 4 or 5 of my other Broadcom finalists from that year were also competing, and during the award ceremony, when I won an award, they would all message me, and then we would message each other back and forth about it. And I think it's just really fun and an important community, close-knit community. And I think it's important. I just want to thank Broadcom for creating this really important experience.
Well, thank you, Johan. I'm really so glad to hear that, because, all of us at the society here, we're all cheering for you on the back end as well. Whenever we see any of your names appear, we're always just so happy for you. And you guys really are exceptional. Cynthia, can you remember a favorite memory from your time at Broadcom Masters?
Yeah, I was thinking of this, and I honestly, it was hard to narrow it down to just one, but I think if I had to pick one, I don't know if this event was continued in future years, but I remember we put on these suits and went wading into the water to catch I don't know what it was, some sort of organism or species. But it was just such a unique experience, nothing I'd ever done before. And I remember everyone thinking that it was just the highlight of the day or of the week. So yeah, I just remember that really clearly. But I also remember just the very small moments, either the bus rides or talking to people after dinner. It was really great to get to know everyone. And I think in terms of keeping in touch with Broadcom Masters after, I think that's one of the biggest impacts that Broadcom Masters has had on me, is the friendships and the connections that it gave me. So many aspects of my life have been impacted because of that. Actually, right after Broadcom Masters, I started Opportunity X, which Aaron mentioned previously, with another fellow Broadcom Masters finalist that I had met at finals week. And Opportunity X ended up growing nationwide, simply because we were friends with a bunch of Broadcom Masters from various states, which has been super awesome. And right now there's various people from various grades and different classes of Broadcom Masters, which is awesome. And I think even to this day, Johan mentioned, I remember at ISEF 2019, there were around maybe 10 or so of us from the same class, and we all took a group picture. It was just awesome to see everyone again. And to this day, I still every now and then at some event or just randomly, I'll talk to one of my friends from the finals week. So yeah, it was really awesome. And I think that was probably the best thing to come out of Broadcom Masters.
Yeah, we love hearing that you guys not only form these great friendships, but that you can go on to use them professionally, like Cynthia did with her awesome nonprofit. So that is incredible.
Awesome. So our next question is, so each of you are obviously at different stages of school and life. But can you tell us a little bit more about what you've been up to since Broadcom Masters, and how did your Broadcom Masters experience help you prepare for what you're doing now? Cynthia, do you want to go ahead and get started? You talked about it a little bit already, but feel free to elaborate.
Yeah, for sure. So I would say Broadcom Masters was a huge stepping stone for me in terms of just introducing me more to the world of research and science fairs, and the greater scientific community. And of course, once you're a Broadcom Masters semifinalist or finalist, you're basically a society alum, which is really awesome because there's so many different alumni who you can connect with and just talk to, and really, really cool scientists and people. So I think that has been super eye-opening for me in terms of what I've been up to since Broadcom Masters. So it's been 5 years or so. Of course, I did high school, and I recently graduated and just finished my first year of college. But even now, I'm still working on research projects, obviously in different domains. But overall, it's been very exciting, and I definitely credit a lot of my interests and passion for research to Broadcom Masters. just because it was such a great like introduction to the research world. And I think in terms of opportunities that were opened up to me because of Broadcom Masters, like I mentioned previously, like the Society Alumni Network is so huge, and there are like alumni events like every now and then that you can go to and meet really cool people at. So I've definitely been able to talk to like scientists much older than me, or various professionals in the field, ranging from like startups to like psychiatrists, like many different really cool people, all of whom participated in like one of the 3 society programs. So I would highly recommend applying to Broadcom Masters to have like a chance to connect with these people as well.
Thanks, Cynthia. Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, even just by entering Broadcom Masters, by completing your application and submitting it by the deadline, you are considered a Broadcom Masters alumni. So we really value all of you as alumni and want to continue to grow our alumni network and programming for you all. So that is definitely a great perk of submitting your application. Johan or Ishana, anything to add?
Yeah, so I think Broadcom Masters and just applying generally has taught me a lot about writing, and specifically writing about like science. So I recently did a TEDx talk, and I learned a lot about like I had to write it, and I think that because of Broadcom and the application, I really learned how to write scientifically and write about science in a way that was still engaging for like a community. And I just learned like so much from that experience about how to communicate, how to have scientific conversations, and how to like I said before, just really be engaging about science, which I guess can sometimes be like a little bit hard to understand or like a little bit unengaging, but how to make it fun and how to make every step of it so that you want to learn more and really curious. And so that you're always curious and always asking questions.
Yeah, that's really great advice. And I think totally that writing down your thoughts in the Broadcom Masters application is just a useful practice to help you further in life, just like it did for you about a week ago at the TEDx talk. So glad to hear it. Johan and Dad?
To add on whatever what they said, I think my Broadcom Masters experience really gave me the inspiration and motivated me to do more in the field of science, as well as improving my presentation and science writing skills, which beforehand I did not have much experience with that. Also, I really saw what other people were doing there, and I learned from their experience, and improving my communication and teamwork skills, which are both valuable. Going on about what I did since then, just competed a few weeks ago in the 2021 ISO Science Fair. And I think that my experience from Broadcom helped, as it helped to improve my presentation skills, really taking what's in the important parts of my research and explaining it to somebody who might not always understand my work, as well as improving my science writing skills, which helps with that application as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Johan.
Now to switch things up just a little bit, what are you guys interested in outside of science? And have you ever found that those two interests that you have intersect? Ishana, can you start us off?
Yeah. So I enjoy fencing and playing the flute. And I think that science is not only like learning about things that are scientific, but I think that science is almost like an art of learning how to ask questions and also learning how to listen. So with my two activities, fencing and flute, with fencing, I've learned like when to ask questions if you don't understand something, and how to also like be observant of, because it's a one-on-one sport, be observant of your opponent to kind of learn what they're doing and take that into account as you try and counter that and score your own points. And for flute, it's an instrument, obviously. So like learning how to really hone in on things that are important with instruments, and like not only like what note are you playing, but like do you sound good? Is your rhythm right? And really just listening to the little details.
I love that. science is getting you to ask more questions about the rest of your life. That's so awesome. Cynthia, what about you? What are you interested in, and does that ever intersect with science?
Yeah, so apart from science, I like to play volleyball, and I also really like art. So that involves like painting and design and just sketching. I think there are a lot of like there's like a lot of intersection between art and science actually. And I know like there's a lot of people who have worked at like the intersection of such fields, but I think, for example, for one of my physics projects in high school, I designed this like magnetic sculpture, which was kind of like an intersection of these two fields. And I haven't really fully explored this like intersection enough, and it's maybe something that I want to do a little bit more in college. But I do think that like art and science, when combined together, can be really fascinating. I've like read this book on like how science kind of manifests, no, how math kind of manifests itself in art. And it was like a super interesting book, kind of related to architecture and everything. So I think that's something that I kind of want to explore maybe going forward. But yeah, it's pretty interesting to hear everyone's opinions on this.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely an intersection there with math and art and science. And like I've seen like so many t-shirts that are like math is beautiful, you know, and it's true. Like you just look at certain things like in nature and math is reflected there. And I'm going off on a tangent. Anyway, Johan, what hobbies do you have?
So outside of science, I like to play tennis. I've been playing since I've been in 4th grade. I also like to play violin. I'm in a Cincinnati Symphony Youth Orchestra, which is the top orchestra in my region. So I think that like both Ishana and Cynthia have mentioned, there is overlap between both science and art and other fields as well. I think that, you know, some of the skills that I learned in science applications, I think can be applied to other fields. I think particularly violin, it's a lot of the things that you have to think about, the notes, and also just the constant growth and learning from your mistakes. You know, I've been playing for almost like 6-7 years, and it's always constantly trying to learn from that. And also, I think the discipline that you learn from violin and can be also applied to science as well as school in general.
Absolutely. Yeah, those like life skills definitely transfer between hobbies and science for sure.
Awesome. So we're going to do our last set question before we move on to questions from the audience. And this one is specifically for Johan and Cynthia, who have progressed a little bit more through high school and even college. Ishan, I know you've been keeping busy and could probably answer this question yourself too. But generally, what advice do you have for students on balancing schoolwork, working on their science fair projects, and just generally taking care of yourself as you move through high school and college when things get a little bit more intense? Either one of you can take it away.
I can go first. So I think obviously with like a virtual environment, it can be really tough to, separate work and play, and just to make sure that your like life has a healthy balance. And I think like obviously high school, college can be a really busy time with schoolwork and extracurricular activities and everything. So for me, I think I personally think that exercise is a really crucial part of my life. So in high school, I played volleyball, and recently during quarantine, I've picked up running. So I'd really recommend just to get outside in any way, even if it's just like a 15-minute walk or doing some yoga outside or any sort of outdoor activity like hiking or anything that maybe your weather will allow, is really great. And I think also just making sure to not put too much pressure on or stress on yourself. Like just know that you've already done like a really great job with whatever project you're working on, and to be able to make it to this stage is already incredibly amazing. So yeah, just give yourself a pat on the back and definitely don't stress too much.
Yeah, that's really well said. How about you, Johan?
Okay. I think this past year has been, very unique, and it has posed many challenges, especially to our way of doing things and overcoming various situations. I think when I started my project, my current project this year, I started a little bit before the shutdown and conducted most of my tests. So during quarantine, I mainly focused on, data analysis, modeling, and report writing. But for general advice to applicants about balancing this work-life balance, I think that when it comes especially to the application and maybe dealing with other like club responsibilities and anything else that the applicants may be currently dealing with, I think schoolwork is a priority, and maybe taking that, making sure to address that as something that should be dealt with first. But also, I think having time to explore other interests. During quarantine, I picked up cooking and spending time more with my parents as well, which was missed when I was focusing on, I have other clubs or extracurriculars and studying for other AP classes and everything. So that balance between, schoolwork, other AP curriculars and classes, and making sure everything's balanced while also having the time to take a break and explore other interests that you may have. I think this balance is important.
Great words of advice. Yeah, balancing and prioritizing tasks are definitely key. So now we're going to go ahead and take some questions from the audience. We'll go ahead and ask a few of these, but just ask that one or two of you answer them so that we can get through all the questions that were asked. Erin, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah. So I'm going to ask this one to Ishana because she has done her project most recently. So what was your favorite part of working on your project, and what made you smile when you finished all your work?
I think that, and this is like kind of cliche, my favorite part of my project was honestly seeing the results. After I did my experiments with trying to see if I could change people's perception of imaginary colors, it was really amazing to see that what I thought and what I had researched for a couple months actually, it was a real thing that could work, and that I could actually change the way people perceived imaginary colors. And I think that was really exciting to see that. And I think after I sent my application in, it was like a really good feeling because I knew that I spent a lot of time on this, and I was really happy that I could it was kind of like a closed circle because I could write up everything that I had done and reflected back on all of my project and all of my research, and it was kind of just like a full circle closing of like my science project. It didn't end there, but it was definitely like a really good feeling after.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that feeling of accomplishing something and seeing it to fruition is great, and we're glad that it made you happy too.
Awesome. So our next question is, was there any time when you were working on your project that you felt really nervous? And what did you do to get over those nerves? I think you talked about this a little bit, but Johan or Cynthia, anything to add there?
So when again, as I mentioned earlier, maybe telling you a bit more about my stories, I was really nervous about the application that was coming up because because of my fairs much later in the year, I didn't have that much time for my application. And, I was also nervous and unsure of myself about, all these amazing projects do I have the potential to move on? So I think that, just the fact that you already qualified for Broadcom Masters is amazing accomplishment in and of yourself. So there should be some solace in that accomplishment. And moving forward, I think that it's just going back to the basics about really telling what's important about your project, and trying to answer the questions as best you can. I think is important, and will help going forward as the application cycle continues.
Thanks so much, Johan. Yeah, and I think it's also really important to know that getting nervous is totally normal and everyone goes through it. But it's okay to feel that way and you can work through it and maybe even make it as a finalist. So great to hear from you on that. Thanks.
Our next question is, did you feel like you had to rack your brain for ideas for projects, or did they come naturally? Like, did you see a problem with potential or search for one? Cynthia, since I know you've had several projects, how about you take a stab at this one?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. Now that I think back on it, maybe for my first few projects, I did have to do like quite a bit of brainstorming with like, what I wanted to narrow down on. I think the way that I kind of focused on a project or chose one was mainly by seeing what like kind of just excited me the most. Like for example, when I was working on like the drought project, I thought that was super interesting just because it was so relevant to my local community and just like an issue that had been talked about for such a long time. So I was really excited to work on it. And even for future projects, when the idea came more naturally or I didn't have to like do as much like background research, I think a really great way to like figure out whether like a project idea is good is just whether you're super excited to talk about it, to learn more about it, and to like ask questions about it. Just because you're going to have to be spending a lot of time with that project idea over like the next couple of years or so. So I think that's kind of a tip that I would give if you're either like searching for project ideas or trying to like narrow it down to a single one.
That is a great piece of advice. Thanks, Cynthia.
All right, so our last question from the audience is specifically about the application. And thinking back to the essay sections, how did you answer the solve a problem question? I'll just start out by saying that in the essay questions, the section of the application, particularly for the solve a problem question, you don't have to do a ton of research to find the answer. We want to the judges just want to see, how you might approach a problem that you don't have a lot of background in compared to your research project. But maybe Ishana, if you want to take a stab at this question, since you've most recently completed the application.
Yeah, I assume you're like referring to the solve a problem. I believe it was estimate how much trash in the US.
So yes, so for your application, we changed the question every year, but just generally, thinking about that solve a problem essay question, how would you approach it? How did you approach it?
I didn't do like a whole ton of research, like conduct like a full experiment or do like a ton of research. I mostly kind of just tried my best to put myself in like a person who's dealing with this problem's shoes, and also use prior knowledge. So for the question that I chose, I knew like a little bit about what people were doing about this problem. So kind of just trying to think about that, maybe rewatching some videos, rereading some articles or papers, and trying to just like come up with an organized, I guess, plan for the problem that was a problem I picked, and just come up with like a sequence on how I wanted to solve this problem and what I would have done if I were actually in charge of solving this problem.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Just talking through your thought process is really a great way to approach that problem. All right, so I think now we're just going to I just wanted to address a couple questions generally about the application that we got here in the chat before we say goodnight to everyone. So one question that I just wanted to answer quickly here is basically, how do the 30 finalists get selected from the pool of applications? And is there any step between the top 300 and 30 finalists? The answer is no, there's no step in between. After you submit your projects by the application deadline, we have a team of evaluators and judges that will read through them and select the 30 finalists. So there's nothing else you have to worry about. We're going to announce the top 300 masters on September 1st this year and the finalists on September 14th. And then the second question I just wanted to address, kind of going back to the solve a problem essay question, should we include references and citations at the end of our essay or not? The answer is no, you do not need to include references. great question, but definitely don't need to worry about using any of your word limit for those citations. Awesome. So we are just at about time. I wanted to say thank you again, Johan, Cynthia, Ishana. Thank you so much for being with us today and sharing your experience about Broadcom Masters and the application and everything after that as well. Really value your insight, and I hope all of the students watching got a lot out of hearing from folks that were in your shoes not too long ago. So thank you again, once again. For everyone watching, we'll do one final webinar towards when we get closer to the application deadline. That application deadline again is June 9th. You can always email us at masters@societyforscience.org if you have any questions. If you have any questions that didn't get answered today, we'll be happy to answer them via email. And thanks again. Thank you for watching.
Good night.
Good luck on your application.
Good luck, guys. Yeah.
Good luck. Thank you.
All right, it is done.